The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation building series, The Law and You. This is program number 881. Coming to you on Monday the 23rd of October 2017. On this program, I will continue the topic political tribalism. This will be part 3 of that topic. But before getting into the topic, let me say first of all, happy independence to the nation. Going to be our 38th year of independence, and may we all take in the significance of that and enjoy ourselves with our several pursuits on Independence Day Friday. Let me also, as usual, send my condolences to all families which have suffered recent bereavements. And in that connection, let me belatedly send condolences to the family of Mr. Henrik Bullock, known to us all as Big One, who was laid to rest a few days ago. I missed that announcement, and let me send special condolences to his wife, Mrs. Sylvina Bullock. Albert Teixeira and the other member of the family whom I know extremely well, Ian Carley Bullock, the brother of the deceased. May you all receive fortitude from the good Lord to cope with your loss. Well, the late Mrs. Shirley Byron Cox had a tremendous send-off at the New Testament Church at Wilson Hill on Friday afternoon. Beautiful funeral service, and everything was done very well. All the renditions, the songs, and everything very, very thrilling. And let me mention two persons in particular. Firstly, a grandson, Nigel Crease, who delivered the eulogy. Now, this was a young man in his teens, and it was masterfully delivered. So congratulations to young Mr. Nigel Crease. But to me, the outstanding rendition at that funeral service was that of young Mr. Christopher Grant. I had never heard the young man sing before. And when he went up to sing "To God Be the Glory," he has a beautiful tenor voice. And as he sang, you know what went through my mind? That it is a pity that in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, people of outstanding talent do not have the opportunity to have that talent developed. If that young man was in a bigger country, say if he was in the United States of America or England, indeed if he was an Italian, he would have developed into a world-famous tenor. I mean, listening to him, my mind went back to the great operatic pieces provided by what I would regard as the three leading tenors in the world today: Pavarotti, Carreras, Jose Carreras, and Placido Domingo. So, young Mr. Grant, you keep on blessing the hearts of those for whom you sing in future. And if I know you're going to sing at any event and I happen to have the opportunity, I would certainly want to come and be blessed by the abundance of your talent, beautifully modulated and strong tenor voice. So we have our own Placido, our own Jose, our own Luciana to brag about in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Okay, well, let me get on to the topic for the evening, continuation of the topic on political tribalism. I've had interesting comments on what I have rendered so far, and I want to thank those persons who have indicated to me how they felt about what I delivered, and they recounted their own experiences of tribalism. Well, let me begin by saying this and by repeating and elaborating on something I said in the last program. Over the years, political campaigning has been overwhelmingly dominated by gutter politics. By that I mean political parties set out at election time to utterly destroy the characters and reputations of their opponents. You recall, those of you who have seen any of the Godfather films, that a contract killer would be sent to kill someone. And in several instances, just before the victim is shot, the killer would tell the victim, no hard feelings, just business. Meaning that there's nothing personal to the killing, but it is simply a job to be done, either for money or as an aspect of the affiliation with one mafia family or the other. So it is in our gutter politics. Very often when people get on the platform, or increasingly nowadays on radio, to destroy the character of an opponent, they do not do it because they are personally motivated. They simply do it because they think it is expected of them as the mouthpiece of a political party to say the worst things about a candidate. Now, in the days of Joshua and Cato, when the PPP and the Labour Party dominated politics, roughly between 1955 and say 1974, there was quite a lot of gutter politics going around. But it was largely confined to the political platform, and it was largely confined to the election period. Outside elections, people got along, but when a campaign started, then the PPP and Labour would go at each other's throats. A PPP man would not go into the shop of a Labour man to buy and so on, and families would not speak to other families on the other side of the political divide. That was in those days. But we are supposed to be much more enlightened nowadays. We boast that we are much more educated. Our levels of literacy have gone very high. But our increased educational attainment has not meant the lessening of tribalism when it comes to political activity. And now that we have talk radio, the political campaigning is never-ending, non-stop. It goes from election to election without any break, no let-up, no time for people to knit back, so that what you have is the fostering of hostility continuously from year to year, from election to election, where it is felt that that is a necessary part of politicking. Excuse me. Now, one of the reasons for the descent into the gutter in our system is really the absence of policy differentiation between the parties. In other words, there's an absence of any sharp ideological differences between one party or another. And the person who expressed it first and best, as far as I'm concerned, was the late the Honorable E.T. Joshua. We quoted him in the Forum magazine of September 1972, you know, the Yellow Forum, the flagship edition. We quoted Joshua from an interview he gave to Youth magazine in May 1967. And this is what Joshua said about the political division between the two parties. Joshua said, quote, "In the West Indies, no political leader can bring a scheme or policy that is different altogether from that of the other party. It is only the modus operandi, perhaps, that could be stressed, that one may feel that they could implement it better than the other could. There is the question of the ambition of political leaders who would rather that the whole country go down than to form coalitions for the purpose of good government. We are seen thus drifting far from the political shore because we go out to condemn the same thing that we are trying to promote. The plans may be similar, but the difference is who must execute them, Joshua or Cato. That is the big question here in the island. Who must have the ostentatious leadership of this land?" Ebenezer Theodore Joshua, in an interview given to Youth magazine in May 1967, as quoted in the Forum. Now, in some large countries where there are sharp differences ideologically between the parties, people differ and they discuss ideas. In fact, we are now seeing, creeping back in the United States of America, serious aspects of political tribalism led by the present President of the United States of America. But generally, in those countries, people campaign on ideas and policies. Largely in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, people campaign on other people. It is true, yes, that development plans as published in manifestos are talked about more by way of lip service. But generally, you listen to a political meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines at election time, and it is really 80% castigation of the candidate personally and 20% about the policies of the party of that candidate. We have been practicing the politics of personal destruction in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And you would have thought that the more educated we become, the more sophisticated the electorate becomes, the less we would have this sort of gutter politics preached. But apparently that is not the case. Now that we have two political leaders who both hold the highest academic qualification of PhD, Doctor of Philosophy, for the first time in the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have the leaders of both parties being doctors, political opponents, both PhDs, which means that our two national leaders boast the highest educational qualification normally available outside of, fellowships and so on. But in Trinidad in the 70s and 80s, they used to call it doctor politics. I am challenging both the Prime Minister, Dr. Gonsalves, and the leader of the opposition, Dr. Friday, to make a concerted effort to lift the tone and content of political discourse among their supporters, and to rein in and control in a more effective political way the extremism that flows from the mouths of their spokespersons. Both these good gentlemen owe it to the nation to make sure that their party followers and their party operatives, their candidates, and those who support their candidates raise the level of political discourse above the level of purely personal attacks aimed at utterly destroying the character and reputation of their opponents. I think it is well within the capability of both gentlemen. I happen to think very highly of both of them. These are grown men, seasoned men, sensible men, who ought to control their party spokespersons. And let me say this. I have seen cases in St. Vincent and the Grenadines where candidates have lost support because of the excesses of some of their supporters. Let me repeat. Candidates, in my experience in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I have a lot of political experience, candidates have actually lost support by their own supporters. Their supporters have cost them support. In other words, sometimes the gutter politics become so intense that they become counterproductive. Very recently, for example, someone got on Facebook and wrote the most scurrilous attack on me. Someone from the NDP, one of the NDP's spokespersons. I haven't bothered to respond, at least not yet. But that attack was reported to me by several of my relatives and friends who read it on Facebook, outraged that this lady should have the effrontery to be so out of place as to write that sort of thing about P.R Campbell. And not only outraged, but it incidentally, they all happened to be NDP supporters, but vowed to withhold their support as a reaction to the nonsense the lady wrote about somebody they respect and admire. So I say that to say this, that the practice of tearing people's characters can sometimes be detrimental to the party on whose behalf, ostensibly, those utterances are made. So that in the next general elections, I would be interested to see to what level the political parties depend on purely personal attacks on their opponents. And if I see evidence of it, I will speak about it on this program, because the country deserves better from the two outstanding leaders we have now. I am not saying the leaders themselves indulge in that, because generally leaders don't get down into the gutter. But party operatives get on the radio or organize to call in to the radio and use that as a medium to destroy the characters of their opponents in a way which has nothing to do with governmental policy. I have been saying for some time, and I started this last year, that our political system if not by design, by operation, is based on naked competition, and the competition in which the winner of elections takes all. There is no space for an opposition to influence government's policies and programs. There is no mechanism in our governance structures to cater for an input from anybody on the opposition. For example, when the ULP was in opposition, nobody in the NDP bothered with any suggestions they made, because it was understood that when you are in power, you don't listen to the opposition. And when the tables were turned and ULP came into power, tit for tat. So that St. Vincent and the Grenadines had the ridiculous situation in which arguably the most qualified economist in the country, who happened to have been leader of the opposition, had no contribution to make, or was not called upon to make a contribution, or there's no mechanism for him to make a contribution to the development of economic policies and practices. The system said, our leader of the opposition with a master's degree in economics had no role in governance except to go in parliament and talk. There is no governance committee comprised of both sides of the House that was mandated to come together every now and then so that the parties could listen to one another. No. In our system, the attitude of those in government is that you in opposition, behave yourself. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. Keep quiet. You could spout off all the noise you want, but nobody is paying attention to you. And believe you me, if the tables do turn in the future and NDP gets into office, it will practice the same negative attitude, because there's nothing in the structure of governance that caters for anything different. So that what you will have, if the opposition gets into office, because of political tribalism, the opposition government would pay no attention to the new opposition who used to be in government, no matter what experiences they have gathered over the years, which could be of assistance to the nation in its nation-building efforts. So basically what you have in St. Vincent and Grenadines is one segment of your able-bodied manpower resources languishing in frustration and in non-utility, while the other runs the country until the electoral fortunes change, and then you get a vice versa. A few years ago, we tried to give the nation a system in which both opposition and government could play a role. There's some meaningful role for the opposition in the system we had devised. In fact, we devised a system where there would also have been some meaningful role for members of civil society. The nation rejected that. The nation said we want to keep tribalism. But it need not be that way. But we can pamper set and carry on and mess around until we are faced with a national calamity. Then we would see the importance of a more cooperative attitude to transform our parliament from a mere place where the government goes and gets its business done to a place where there could be genuine collaborative efforts. And I hope Dr. Friday and Dr. Gonsalves would rise to the challenge, and I will keep speaking on the topic because in the powers of both men, in the hands of both men, lies the power of change. With that, I must once again wish one and all a peaceful and happy independence. Let me invite one and all to St. Elizabeth Belmont Harvest on Sunday, the 29th. We begin at 2 o'clock, and as usual, all spiritual Baptist churches and other church goers and even non-church goers are welcome to attend. So that is all for now until next Monday DV, when I will present once again this public service nation building series, The Law and You. May the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.